I'm going to test.
You're going to test?
Yes,
I'm
failing. I don't have a place to put this. I'm going to put it there. I hope that doesn't ruin anything. I'm going to see how bad things are if we have... I'm setting the sensitivity low because I'm sick and tired of how freaking loud the background noise this manages to be in a room that is ostensibly silent. I mean, the air conditioning is the only thing that can be making noise. And apparently it makes enough noise to be noticeable.
And apparently clippers.
Clippers. Oh, something was going on, I'm telling you that much. And then, the table's another issue, because obviously the mic's on the table, so anytime we put something on the table...
Well, that alone, I think is...
But even then, I like keyboard, even the keyboard's loud. It's like... Since I adjust the audio levels anyways, since I have to apply...
do you bump them? You apply a post?
I essentially do a compression. And I noticed that despite the fact that, like, speaking volume... I think the issue I was having originally... is that I was still setting the mic sensitivity to what it was before I knew how to do compression stuff in the software. Like,
sure.
So I was trying to get it so that average speaking volume was as close to 0 as could be feasible, which is of course probably lunacy.
Sure.
Because now it's like, okay, yeah, sure, negative, like we're averaging at like negative 25, which is not very loud, but you'll notice in that silence it goes all the way down to like negative 60. So that's enough of a gap that I'm sure if I add a compression to that, I can get the actual volume up reasonable. And the background noise won't also be quite noticeable. Because I was actually... I was listening today on my cheap little travel headphones. And I edit with my much nicer headphones, and I was like, I probably should... flip that the other way around, because like the nice headphones, it's like, yeah, that sounds all right, and on the less expensive headphones, it's like, yeah, no, it's pretty crunchy.
It's fairly crunchy.
Speaking of crunchy,
yeah,
why you got to do crunching. That? Well, that's why
there's background noise.
Why we're very informal today. Well, we're also informal because there's plenty to catch up on, and I don't know if I should say it because that'll throw people off, because I don't know how these are going to be released, but we're going to end up basically having to replay the video from last week.
Oh, why is that?
Because it screwed up in the way we can't fix.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why.
Replay which video? Like
the weird Italian game. Didn't record properly. Yeah. Video got all screwed. Which is really sad, because I thought the audio was rather humorous, but when the video is crap and the audio is fine, like, we can't do anything with that unless we just play it without the video, which makes no sense. If the video worked and the audio was bad, we could just redo the audio, but not so.
Why can't? Well, I guess we can't respond to things, I suppose, in real time. As far as what we responded to, you can't then.
Well, I can't make the game happen the same way.
Right, that's what I mean. You can't.
Well, and I was going to say, well, this gives me a chance. I'll play the game maybe more purposefully to try and grasp its mechanics so that we're not fumbling so much, and then I didn't do that, so we'll fumble just as much.
So we're still going to be fumbling. Well, let's pull it up.
No, not while you're trying to do this. We're not going to be mad. We got plenty to catch up on.
What's that mean?
I don't know.
I don't know what you're on about.
I'm just saying, it's been a while since we've done a therapy. I was happy with the thumbnails from the last couple of videos. I was like, the problem is, it occurred to me because I've been playing through the one game. Spiritfarer has been the game I used several times in the background because it was just the game that I was playing. And then I was like, I don't want to have like 10 episodes of this being purely in the background where we never actually address the game because we're not actually playing it at the time of recording.
Well, that and I was like, then dictate that I need to be able to see.
And then I was like, and then people will be upset at like, why are you talking over the game?
Well, if they're upset about that, they're in the wrong place.
Case, yes, I agree. But I mean, it would be weirder in the sense that like we never even so much as address it.
Well, that's
because every time we've done it, we've had a non-game conversation that I just stuck that on the background. And I was like, why do I do that? It's because I feel like there needs to be some visual aid. So then I just had a whole bunch of AI-generated medieval images, which was quite humorous. So, the problem is I'm going to run out of that. I don't want to keep doing that because they're all going to end up basically being the same. So I don't know what I'm going to do for this.
Well, gotta get.
We'll become VTubers.
No.
Hey, we might as well.
I don't know. Get creative with something.
Well, I think you could get creative because we probably missed the chance because like the whole VTuber thing's already kind of. I mean, I can't say it's cresting the hill, but it's certainly become. It would no longer be a new thing. We would just be like, oh yeah, there's more following the trend. Because back when it was becoming a thing, I was like, it was way back when we were still doing. I don't even. It might have even been during Batman. It was a long time ago. I was like, yeah, it could be. The problem is that's actually like weirdly expensive, and unless it's expensive, it sucks. Mm-hmm. Like all the people who are like small time streamers who do it, where it's like, yeah, I did this myself. It's like I can tell. And all the people who are like actually professionals, it's like, yeah, this costs like several $1,000s. I had to hire an actual animator to do it. It's like I'm like, oh, that seems really ridiculous, but who could have known that was the trend?
Yeah.
I do think there's a hole in that market for not anime inspired ones.
Huh.
Because that's literally all it is. Primarily because they're very popular in Japan, so it's like, duh. But still, I'm like, I have seen clips of some people who actually are like weird.
Do like a Ricky Gervais like animated type.
That isn't at all what I was thinking, but that actually would be.
It would work for us.
Yeah. Although that was obviously animated by people.
Right, of course, but I'm just saying it would definitely fit our
I mean, that would work.
I
I was thinking there just should be more of different art styles, even. Like, I actually had
super rudimentary, like...
No, that wouldn't be as interesting. I was thinking we should actually have... I was going to say, like, Tolkien-esque...
black and white, almost...
Well, I wasn't going to go that... But yeah, like illustrations from a medieval book.
Right.
Because I was also... It's like, well, we could lean into the whole elf-dwarf thing.
Sure.
But then I was like...
I think...
Even back when I was thinking this, I was already thinking we would be behind the curve.
Pendulum-wise in that I don't know that I
don't want to hear about your pendulum.
Well, I'm going to talk about my stuff dropping. So...
Well, I don't want to hear about that neither.
No, I think the pendulum for me, as far as the elf dwarf...
See, what's funny is you're going to start swinging that way.
I'm swinging one way.
I'm making it worse. I think we had our talk about how I like Klingons and how I actually have swung slightly off of the door. I mean, this is, of course, it's not in the Tolkien spectrum anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like dwarves aren't... I mean, you could certainly make the case that, like, dwarves could be similar to Klingons, but I don't think they are. And I mean... Obviously, I don't know where I'm going with this. Because I feel like I'm making a really uselessly... like, yes, I know that there's a point to be made, but I'm not sure it's one that needs making. But I'm going to do it. Because now I've started.
It's too late. You're into it now.
Yeah, I'm merging two very disparate fandoms. And they're not really that disparate.
The quicker you're into it,
this isn't Star Wars versus Star Trek. I feel like Star Trek and Lord of the Rings, it's like those are often... the Venn diagram's got a lot of overlap between those people.
You're building quite a seed bed, and at this point I feel like it's going to be a letdown. You're trying to
I've already said it's a letdown. I said from the beginning I don't need to do this, but I'm going to now. Because the thing I like about... Probably this is just because this was one of the more recent episodes of Star Trek. It's like, I just like whenever Worf gets an episode to himself. I mean, he doesn't get them to himself, but like when he's the main character. Because I think Klingon culture, they do a good job of it not being as one-dimensional as it sounds. It's like, oh, they're just this race of war people who only do war. And it's like, well, that's not actually the case. They basically just dial everything they do up to 11. Like even their like art and culture is all the way up to 11, and I appreciate that. Where it's
is interesting.
They're not only the greatest warriors; they're also like ascribed. Is that the word I'm looking for? They're said to be like the greatest poets and the greatest like artists, because everything they do is like turbo they don't muck around.
Level 1000. Which is interesting because I don't
And I
know
like that.
I feel like
I would fit in with a culture that was
Would
like
you, though?
deadpan serious all the time. I feel like I could get along well.
Yes, but that's not a very... What you talked about was the opposite of that, which is a very passionate and high intensity.
Well, deadpan, you can be deadpan and serious.
Sure.
And you...
But does that
Again,
require...
well, here we go. I've found a way to make this all actually valuable to talk about, because this was one of the topics I had saved. I've been harping on it forever, is the whole concept of it doesn't take itself serious, and why I don't like that phrase. But I think I've discovered that the root of it is that the word serious has too many connotations. Because what I think, if I were to be more precise, I would say what I want things to be is not inherently serious, but I want them to be sincere.
Sincere is a good word.
Because serious does have an emotional tone aspect, where it's like, okay, a serious thing precludes being a silly thing.
Well, it also
I mean,
precludes...
depends on your definition, but generally the accepted definition, in fact, some dictionaries even say, not being silly or not being jovial.
I'm reading into seriousness, but I think also...
Whereas I was attributing it
almost
sincerity as in...
It almost dictates a bit of
It's
placidness as well, in my opinion. That, and again,
well,
that may be
again,
something
tonally
I'm reading
speaking.
into that, but...
Well, a lot of people do, which is why I felt like I needed a better word. Because the thing that I definitely know I dislike is not inherently unseriousness, but it's flippancy.
100%.
I don't like irreverence. It's just like, yeah, I don't care.
Yes.
You can be silly, but I want you to care about being silly.
Correct. You should be clever or, witty or whatever.
Or even so just balls to the wall. like I don't know, I couldn't at all consider Homestar serious by any stretch.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think that they are so committed to being ridiculous that I appreciate it. Because it isn't.
But they certainly are good at their craft. That's
it's purposeful. It's not like just, we don't care, so we slapped a bunch of dumb jokes together and we call it good.
Right.
I don't like that. Whereas I like that it's like, no, it's almost to the level of satire, but it's satirizing nothing.
Well,
it doesn't have a point.
There's an intentionality to saying we're not just drumming random things up, going in whatever direction it takes us.
Well, because I think many things that claim like, we don't take ourselves seriously, what that means is we didn't exercise any care.
Correct.
We just threw a bunch of stuff, and then when you try to criticize us for it not being good, we're like,
we have that excuse.
Look at you trying to find meaning in something that was dumb. And I'm like, no, there should be just own what you do. Earnestness. Sure. That's another word that you could use.
Good word. I like sincerity though, because sincere, when applied to a state of being, is different than a person to me being sincere. Sincerity in a person almost comes off as like an honesty /
genuineness I would use better.
Yeah.
And I think, here's the other thing, I mean, on a personal level, genuineness is something that I'm like, I don't care. You could be someone totally unlike me, but if I can, and I think you can always sense genuineness. And if you're totally unlike me, but you're genuine, I actually will like you more than if you're like me as a facade.
Sure.
Like, if even, and I mean this, I would carry this to perhaps some ways that you wouldn't think, where we've talked plenty about people who are like, well, because here's the thing, to be genuine would mean, if you are the kind of person who doesn't do any self-reflection, because we've talked about that for the last several weeks,
both on and off air, and it's been really sad because there have been times that I've gotten frustrated at said fact.
What?
The fact that people don't consider themselves or actually have any self-reflection.
But see, that's where I think that because there is less genuineness to someone who avoids themselves. That's the autophobic concept. Yeah. Versus someone who is just genuinely unaware of themselves, but genuine nonetheless. Right. Because those are the kind of people who it's like, if you were to point out, like, oh, hey, I noticed that you do this thing, they'd be like, oh, yeah, I guess I do. Because they're not trying to hide from themselves, they're just genuinely, if anything, it's almost like an uncanny valley thing, where it's like, you can either be super self-reflective and know yourself very well, or you could achieve the sort of uncarved blockness where you just are what you are without thinking about it.
Right.
Because those people I actually have a certain respect for. It's the uncanny valley in the middle of people who have a sense slightly of themselves but don't like it, and so they avoid it.
So they just don't. Yeah.
That's worse. It's like if you're genuinely unself-reflective, and so you're kind of like, I mean, wishy-washy isn't quite the word, but you're just a little bit. I mean, ditzy feels like a rude word, but I mean, not an intelligent sense. But if you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I just sort of float along and I do my thing. But if you're doing that in the sense of if you are being genuine, then I do think that that's in some ways like you've come full circle and achieved the state of.
But there's a difference between
true egolessness.
Yeah, there's a difference between being.
Because those people will never lie to you about themselves.
Not even carefree. There is a.
Well, I feel like it's a little bit of that.
There is a genuine maybe to apply that a carefreeness to somebody who actually has that as a genuine core value versus I would say something like ditzy or even maybe airheaded would be applied to somebody who has been given the opportunity or doesn't have the excuse essentially.
I would actually disagree. I think ditziness again, I mean these are very loaded terms because I think that they have very negative connotations, but like to say somebody's airheaded to me requires that they have chosen a degree. No, see, I would disagree.
And you would say that.
Well, because here's the thing. I mean, there's very few examples I can pull from pop culture, and I know I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think I have ever actually watched this film all the way through. So please do not use my jumping to this as like an admission. Is this a film
I particularly like?
No, you would know this, but like the Legally Blonde character, I don't even know her name. There is an element of like, yeah, I would say you would call that character ditzy.
Yes.
She's not stupid though.
But exactly.
And so to me, ditzy is sort of, again, it's the sort of childlike naivety, and I don't mind naivety given that it is genuine naivety. There are people who feign naivety as a mask for just hiding from themselves. But they actually do know who they are, they're just pretending not to because they don't want to face it. Sure. Yeah, that's probably, I mean, I can't think of a better word. But, like, to be naive is in some ways, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a good thing, but there is an element of the, like, childlikeness, childlike simplicity.
The truth of the matter is, in any given subject, once you lose I wouldn't say capacity, once you lose the perhaps innocence of naivety, you end up having to then own the responsibility of knowledge.
And that's why I think people who are genuinely that way and aren't using it as a shield, when things become revealed to them, they tend to be they make the transition.
They will make the transition. Yeah,
very
you're right.
Better than people who are hiding.
Right.
Because again, these people don't lie to you. They just honestly don't know. And I would rather deal with people who honestly don't know than people who do know
or even could know, maybe is a better word for it, and have refused.
See, I would go so far as to say, if you could know, you do know.
Right.
Because you know that you don't want to look, which means you know enough to know what's there. You know that you aren't going to like what you find, so which means that you know enough to no longer have ignorance.
I suppose it kind of comes down to the whole cognitive dissonance thing and what you do with it, because there are some people who this has always bothered me on a psychological level, where there are genuinely people that when they see that or feel that in themselves, when they are presented with either new facts or maybe new experiences that challenge their previously perceived ideas, that they reject the reality in favor of their previous ideal or previous perspective versus saying, okay, well, I must need to adjust how I think or how I...
Again, that's genuineness. To not know, but then...
To have to make adjustments.
But then adapt because your not knowing was just true.
Right.
And then when you come across something more true,
correct,
you align with that again.
Whereas
that's
if genuine. You embrace the previous, what you're doing is actually substituting an opportunity for growth with...
It's recidivism.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So coming back around to Klingons, I just think I appreciate that they're, if nothing else, they are a sincere culture. That is how they're always portrayed. And I like that because I don't like insincerity. And that's the thing about...
that also, that's how you're connecting it to dwarvism?
Well, because dwarves, I think you
are...
could make the argument. Dwarves certainly could be characterized this way, they just usually aren't. Dwarves could be the Klingons of Middle-earth, but they kind of are not. Because they're often more of the sort of rowdy, rambunctious... And I can understand that to a degree...
Okay.
And I can even appreciate that. Like, I'm sure
though,
dwarves would be fun to be around.
What is it that you're... To me, saying something like dwarves are rowdy and rambunctious is level 11. Is turning everything up to an 11. So I don't understand
but it's not
what
in
you
the...
mean in that... Like, the way that you are applying the at least my perceived idea of the turning everything up to 11 is...
Well, but not in intensity.
See, that's to me what it
purpose. No, because it doesn't have to be
loud and...
No, that's like, you don't... That... I mean, you could argue that that's a form of intensity of purpose, but I mean, I don't know.
So you're saying less turning it up in that it's more passionate and more out there and...
No, yeah, it has nothing to do with out there-ness or external. It's like, it's just...
It's not
everything
externality
Klingons do, they do with their whole conviction.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And I don't know that, and I mean, I'm not saying that dwarves don't do this. They just aren't portrayed that way.
No, that's true.
And they're portrayed as a little bit like, not stupid, but they're not. They're a little like...
Well, it's a bit insincere. It's like there are certain things they just go, nothing is sacred. We are not going to do that. Like...
Well, see, but again, they don't do that either. They don't swing to the other end of the spectrum, but they're just a little...
A little bit. I mean, I don't think that they fully commit to saying nothing is sacred, but there is a point in which they say the other cultures within Middle Earth are almost...
Well, yeah, they're certainly willing to see... I don't know. The problem is I listen to too much British podcasting, so I'm tempted to use British turn of phrase, which would be considered vulgar. That's very much the British notion of, like, they take the piss a lot.
Sure.
Which, I don't know how to translate that to non-British. If you're not familiar with what that means, I don't know how I could explain it, but it's a British phrase basically referring to... It's in some ways a form of irreverence. Because the British are known for their sort of irreverence. But in a sort of tactful, hidden way. Tongue-in-cheek, as it were.
Which I would say is...
I guess maybe that's a more American... More Americans would understand the phrase tongue-in-cheek, perhaps. Because it's a similar idea where it's like, I'm pushing the boundaries, but I'm doing it in such a way that it's like, I'm sort of being secret about it, but everyone can tell. And I don't like that. I'm like, no, just come out with it. I guess...
Whereas I kind of appreciate that.
I can appreciate it on a level of wit. Like, because it does take...
Like, there are times that it's actually tactfully useful... On a...
Well, tactfully useful, yes, but this is why I do prefer the Klingon aspect of, like, screw tact. I'm going to be...
Well, see, that's the...
I'm just going to go in.
Diplomacy in me goes, no.
Yeah, that's where I would...
I'm just going to go in, is that what
If I could be like Worf, where I would just, like, every attempt at tact or subtlety would just be like, punk, nope. Say what you mean, or otherwise I won't respond.
See, I am very much...
Because I'm very much the kind of person that's like, if I don't want to play the game, I will absolutely be like, yeah, of course I can tell what you're trying to get at. I'm going to make you get at it, though. See, you're going to say the words.
To me, I appreciate...
Otherwise I won't respond.
Appreciate the details of the game.
I can respect it on the level of I know that it takes a great deal of cleverness. I just don't... I couldn't be that kind of diplomat. I'd be like, no, I hate you, and I'm going to tell you that.
It's not just even purely diplomacy. It's
well, that's what.
But there's such
used for.
There's such intentionality and precision that's required in that. You know what I mean? Like, not only in that you have to take other people's opinions
like I'm trying to, but it's always behind the curtain in a way.
Yes, well,
and I don't like that.
It's behind people's curtains, if I can say it that way. It's
okay.
I wasn't speaking about physical curtains. Well, obviously,
we're but this is where I just go. I respect it. I just don't like that. That's the world we live in. I guess is what I'm getting at.
You don't like that other people.
I would rather cling on diplomacy, which is I dislike you. And this is the disagreement, and we're going to hash it out, and when we leave, we'll be fine. or one of us will be dead. I appreciate that level of black and white. None of this. I'm going to insult you in such a way that you didn't notice I was insulting you.
Oh, see, I'm 100%.
But when you walk away later, you'll be like, hang on, that was an insult. And then I'll have won. I'm like, I can respect the level of cleverness, but I am still like, I don't want to, I don't like that. See, I don't want to.
That's interesting.
Because if you put that amount of effort into just saying what you meant, you could say so much more.
That's very true. I don't disagree with your sentiment. I just find it interesting because I would have thought that you and I were either more similar in this or actually even maybe reversed, because in normal day-to-day...
As someone who likes house, what were you thinking I was?
I suppose that's true, but for me, I revel in the idea of being able to, like, this is part of the reason why I've always found aristocracy to be such a fun concept, and my wife teases me about this all the time because she talks about, like, oh, if you had it your way, you would be essentially some sort of
you'd be some ridiculous count in the court, and I would be Louis XIV, who literally didn't speak to his counselors ever.
Give two craps.
Like, he would show up, they'd tell him facts, he'd be like, I'll think on that, and then leave. And then he would come back like a week later and be like, here's what we're going to do, and I won't be taking criticism anymore.
Well, that's fine.
I'm officially not taking input.
Well, and I don't see that even doesn't bother me.
It's even in the laws of power. It's like, there are times when you do just want to be like, it communicates a level of authoritarianism to just be like,
I don't think it's a problem.
I'm not taking your criticism today.
And I don't think it's a problem to I don't think you can't ever do that, but there is, again,
I would want to always just be like,
I revel in the idea
like, I'm not even
being able to communicate to someone without them realizing it in the moment, like, okay, but you are actually going to get on my side.
See, I would rather pull the Klingon thing, which is, if you don't do it, you're dying today. Again, there's an element of, we might as well bring it up, there's a sequence in Castlevania at which point, like, all the people come to his door and say, like, may I enter? And of course, in all of the scenes he does, but I'm like, I would absolutely love if people came to the door and was like, can I speak, sir? And I'd just be like, no. And then they have to leave. I would love that they have to leave. And that I can say, no, I won't be taking audience today. Get out. Well, and they have to.
You certainly can still do that, but what I'm saying is...
Well, not really, because... I mean, you could obviously say that to people, but most people wouldn't do it. I mean...
I'm not saying... Okay.
Like, if your family member knocked on your door and was like, hey, do you have a second? And you were like, no, they'd probably be like...
Oh, see, it's not out of obligation, so let me clarify.
Unless it wasn't important, they might be like,
this isn't the thing.
But I mean, if it was something significant, I'd be... even in the face of emergency, to be able to be like, no.
Exactly.
And have them be like...
Okay. I understand.
Because again, that was Louis XIV, where it was like, oh, we have an urgent thing. Not today. Okay, I guess I'll go away then.
No, but I think, let me clarify something, because what I'm getting at is not out of obligation. I feel like you need to have diplomacy or, for respect of
but you find it, I don't know, a game, and I don't like that game.
It's not even that. It's a game for me. If I'm done playing it, I will absolutely tell you to your face, no, I'm not playing it.
I don't want to play at all because it's not a fun game.
It's for me.
The only reason to play it is for other people, in my opinion.
No, here's the one example.
If I could have what I wanted, it would be to say, no, go away.
Here's one example of a way in which I would say this is for you, your benefit as a person, that you're applying the subtlety and kind of the more...
Well, it prevents people from...
No, but look about it this way. What about... the idea of kind of alluring or drawing somebody on a romantic level.
No.
You'd want it to be
I would rather... No, I wouldn't. I can assure you that if some girl makes moony eyes at me from across the bar, I would be far less interested in her than someone who comes up and says, hey, I'd like to talk.
I'd like to jump your bones.
I'm interested. Well, not in that respect, because that would be... But then the issue with that, I wouldn't even take issue with the honesty. I would take issue with the, like, inappropriateness of it. I'm like, okay, well, no. I'm going to reject that offer. But if it was just like, hey, I've seen you around and I'd like to get to know you, I'd be like, that would be something I'm like, that level of honesty is far more interesting than the coy sort of seduction.
Oh, see, for me, seduction is everything.
Screw that.
I love it. No. Subtlety and seduction, to me, is one of my favorite things. Because when you can
Yeah, but see, that's kind of there's weird undertones with that of like
what?
I don't know. You've got some there's a it's not quite sadistic, but it borders on the sadistic where it's like I can manipulate.
No,
you
I wouldn't. Don't disagree in that at all. I'm again.
But see, that's why I like characters. Again, we're going back to
Castlevania.
We're going back to Castlevania. That's why I like Isaac, who is thoroughly immune to such things. Where it's just like, I know they are attempting to seduce me, and because I know, it's not going to work. And that is actually, in my opinion, the greatest reversal of power. Because those who think that's like, I'm going to do it behind the scenes, I'm going to sort of cajole you, and then the moment you can just be like, I know what you're doing, it's like, oh, okay. All the power you thought you were wielding is mine now.
I agree.
The rug is thoroughly out from under you.
But here's the thing. Most of the time when people are inculcating ideas, it's something you're unaware of.
I mean, that's what they're going for.
No.
But I feel like if you're reasonably astute, you'll notice
but
yourself.
That's a jump, though, because that's an assertion that somehow you know the ins and outs of other people's not only intentions.
No, actually the opposite. I think it's the amount of knowing yourself.
It partially
to say if I'm being moved away from something that I think, I'm going to go, okay, this was not my thought.
I'm going to shoehorn this in slightly, but I think it's connected. So within this context, because I was talking about this with somebody else earlier, within this context, just because on a psychological or a sociological level it bothers you that it's true, doesn't mean that it's not still a fact that people are affected by
other people
in various capacities.
But the ability to say no to it is, to me, far more interesting.
And that ability to say no to it varies in people because it's called threshold. That's
obviously, but this is what I'm getting at is I would there was the example given. I'm going to try to, because I feel like it's the best way I can illustrate it given something that we've both encountered, although I don't want to give in too many details because of whatever. But when someone, because again, this is very much the, like, I'm not sure what you'd call it, but the kind of sneaky way of, like, I'm going to insult you by implying something but not directly stating it. I find that the greatest power you have in that impulse is to not take the implication and to simply 100%. Take it on face value. Because then all of their attempt at, like, I'm going to try to deliver my strike while being shrouded, it's like...
Correct.
But that only works if everyone plays along.
Right.
Because everyone then goes, okay, now I can't react because he didn't strictly say it, so if I react to what he means...
But you are playing the game. But that's playing the game.
Still. Whereas I can just go, no, you're going to spit... No, you're not. I'm denying the game.
You're calling it out, and therefore...
But that's not the game.
But it's only because you've opted out in that moment.
Yes, opting out... Well, okay, but if you do that all the time, then you've always opted out.
Sure, that's true.
I'm saying I would do that in every case that I was able.
See, and I wouldn't. I would say there are certain times you certainly pull that power card. No, because there's an
you just go, no, you're going to speak. You're going to say what you mean. Otherwise, I'm going to pretend I don't know.
You pull that power card and you say, no, I'm going to ignore that because it does take away the other person's power. But I think at other times... Diplomacy allows you to basically communicate to somebody, I know what you're doing, and you know that I know what you're doing, but I'm going to let you do this.
Yeah, but see, then I don't... But see, who does that benefit except the other people present?
It benefits you.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, 100%.
It benefits your reputation.
Benevolence is actually a form of power. And so if you're giving somebody a pass... in social
because I think
aspects. Yes, 100%.
That's not exactly the same thing.
Are basically acknowledging between the two of you in very clear, like rhetorical kind of sense.
But see, you could also do this in the blunt way.
You could.
Because again, I'm going to clever. I don't freaking care. I do not care at all. There's an example, again, where we've referred to this book a lot too, The 48 Laws of Power, where he talks about the example of, because again, it makes the idea of weaponized benevolence in this sense, where this Chinese emperor uncovers the plot by one of his subordinates to kill him. He invites him to a banquet, sends him home with lots of gifts, and then he says, this gift is very special, do not open it until you get back to your palace. And he gets back to the palace, and it's all the documentation on the various strings he had pulled to try and kill him.
Yeah.
And it's like all of the evidence, and he gets home, it's like, yeah, I threw you a party. Yeah, I sent you home with gifts. And I know.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not like, oh, I'm going to play the game. This is... I uncovered. This is the evidence.
That is playing the game. That's him saying, okay, so now that you're aware of what I could have done to you. It's essentially holding a knife to somebody's throat and then saying, I've held your life in my hand and I'm giving it back to you. It's essentially what you're doing.
No, because I think it's much more the David approach. It's like, I could have killed you already.
Right, that's what I
But that's
just
not
said.
the game. It's not like I'm going to... Because to me, the only people who benefit are the people surrounding you. Because if you both know, if you are both aware of each other's intentions...
It's not about the other people around
It has to be, because
No.
if you are both aware of each other's intentions, then what's the use of all the subterfuge? Because you've both already seen through it.
Communicate to the other
Yes,
people.
but you have.
No,
the
you
only people
haven't.
who benefit are the people who didn't notice. But if you and the adversary both noticed, then what's the point? The only reason you're doing it is to save face in the presence of everyone else.
Agreed.
And that's where I just go, forget
see,
that.
No, see, then that's where I say I actually appreciate being able to, again, behind the scenes at times, do something without having it be... And again, I admit, there is a degree of manipulation to it. Imagine, say, that somebody is... Again, I think communicating to somebody, hey, I know what you're doing, and I don't appreciate it, so I'm going to communicate in a way that basically says, we're going to do this over here, and almost forces their hand in some capacity. What you are doing is playing mental chess. You're going, check, and then when you put them into checkmate, where it's like, okay, you have no other options at this point, I'm only giving you one avenue of option, what you're doing is, yes, at times you're helping them save face, but it is a weaponizing of benevolence. It's saying, look, I'm giving you a pass in the best way I know how, and I could have absolutely cut your nose off. Like...
I don't know that I feel that that's the same.
See...
Because I think to say, I knew the whole time... Cause, I mean, it's if you pull a... It's not a cask of Amontillado situation where it's like, for the past 10 years, I've made you think I was your friend, and then one day I'm just going to snap and kill you.
No, that is actually... That's a different level of manipulation. That is...
Whereas to me, I think there is the element that just goes, no, it's not going to work. I'm not going to play the chess. I'm just going to pull the rug. And you might argue, well, that's part of the game. It's like, well, not really.
That is a
Flipping
move.
the board is not a move in chess. It is the antithesis of chess.
Sure, but I'm saying
Like,
that option...
Pulling the rug is not part of the dance. So you can't argue like, oh, look
Agreed.
at me. I've played your... And now I have you where I want you. It's like, no. I'm yanking the pretense.
Only at times, though.
No,
To
all
me-
the freaking
to
time.
me, I
This
would
is
say
where you're
that's the
going,
trump
oh, yes,
card.
it's always a move you can use. I'm saying, no, it's the move I always want to use. You're
Why
acting
is
like...
that, though?
Because
Like, I
I would
wanna know,
rather just
because to
say,
me, I like
let
the
us both be man enough to face the truth.
I don't have a problem facing truth.
Because that, I think, is the greatest respect you could ever show to someone, is saying, let's cut through the BS. Because I can face the truth, and I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt and saying, I believe we are both capable of facing up to reality.
Sure.
If you are not, that's on you. But by me extending the olive branch, in your language, I am saying, I think you are capable of facing the truth with me.
Agreed.
Whether or not you can is going to be up to you from this point on. But I think that there is more respect in saying, I disagree and this is why, and let's get to
I
the
agree. That's
nub.
what's interesting. I totally agree.
Well, then I
as
don't
a
get why
friend-
would
as
you
a
enjoy the
friend,
game? What's the fun of the game if you
Because
don't?
there are some people who don't deserve that courtesy.
No, there are some people who absolutely deserve to get burnt alive by the truth.
But see, no.
But I'm not going to spare them that.
But you can't.
That's why I take the
that's
Kantian approach. If the truth kills them, let them die.
No, see, and that's what I'm saying is, to a friend, I would absolutely do that because I want to. There is a different level of.
But see, this is where I go. I would.
To that, where
I don't want
I'm
anything
letting
but
you
friends.
I'm letting you into a space that most other people.
Yeah, but
wouldn't
see,
be
this is
let
where I
into.
go. I will either have friends or nothing, which means.
Well, but I have to interact with certain people.
With me, you will face the truth, or you will not face me.
Well, but that's not.
Again, we talked about Proteus. I was going to share a clip because there was literally a moment in the most recent video when you were trying to make this argument. I just kept going, no, it's not. And it was literally right after we discussed the whole Proteus is changing shape to escape capture, and I was just like, I feel like I accidentally typified it because you were trying to make. It was some argument about like. You always have a perception of what other people think of you. And I was like, I don't think I do. And you're like, well, yes, of course. And I was like, no. You're like, yes, everybody does. And I was like, then show it to
Well,
me.
and it was, again,
It was
the
funny
idea-
because it was that kind of example
And it was
of
the idea of relativism in that each person has a perceived understanding of what people think of them.
But that is
versus what-
but again, that's their own perception. We're not going to
Correct.
get into that. I'm saying I'm just saying I am much in that category that goes, if you wish to face me, you will face the truth, and if you won't face the truth, you won't face me.
So you
And if that filters people out of
what
my
you
life,
just
I don't
did
consider
is
that a
you-
loss.
What you just did is you personified truth.
Sure.
That's a fairly bold
I have
thing.
no
I'm
problem
just-
to suggest that's a hill I'd be happy to die on.
I don't
The
know.
idea that says anyone who's not willing to face the truth isn't someone I want in my life.
No, I'm not saying that anybody who's not interested in facing the truth. What I'm saying is you are putting yourself in the position of truth absolute.
Not absolute. I would say truth as best as it can be
95%.
understood. No, I'm saying I'm aligning myself with the truth I believe I know, and if you could show me better,
see, that
that's not
caveat is
absolute
important
truth
to me. That's I believe
if you,
I know.
But again, that's if you are incapable of facing the truth, mine or otherwise, only people who could face the truth that I present can show me,
different truth
can point me closer to the actual truth.
Sure.
If they're afraid of the truth, they won't be able to point me towards it. So what do I want with them? That's my point. It's like,
Agreed.
correct me and point me towards the truth, don't.
But I think I don't have a problem burning somebody at the stake with truth. You know what I mean? Like there are times
That's
you
a
certainly
soundbite for you.
you can certainly eviscerate somebody with the truth, but it has to be done in the right timing because
Why?
because otherwise
Why?
there are people on a
Why?
This is going to come off really jaded, but the bottom line is most people suck and they aren't going to own the things that they've done.
Then they won't interact with
No,
me.
I agree, but the point is,
You're
I
right, but
want,
see, your
I want
whole-
on a social level, I want them to burn in public.
So see, that's where I don't care. That's again.
I go, no,
that's a
this
matter
is
of
not
like.
going to just be a private thing where I know you screwed up and you get to walk away from it. And
Yeah, but see, then I would say now
Pass.
this is skewing into vengeance rather than.
oh, 100%.
Then
And again, I
justice.
admit that too. No,
Whereas I would
it's
go
justice.
from no, it's
no.
no. Vengeance is not justice inherently. They can overlap, but to
And
say
in this case, they do.
no,
In
but see,
most
this is where
cases,
I
they
go.
do.
No, most cases they don't. Let's get that straight.
No.
In most cases, justice and vengeance very rarely do they overlap truly.
What I'm getting at is
Because the idea that it won't count unless it's public, that's where I go.
not always.
There will be people who reach the end of reach the end of life with all the success you could ever amass, and they will face judgment in hell, and I don't have to be involved.
I agree.
I know people who are like, oh, but I'm so frustrated that they didn't get what was coming to them. I'm like, they will.
No, I'm not talking about that. What
It
I'm
doesn't
saying
have to
is-
be in this
so
life
let-
because, as a matter of fact, the most full justice will come not in this life.
Let me.
So your idea of like it must be public, I go.
No, not always. Let me be more precise on when it must be public. If the offense
When you deem it so?
no,
That's
it
how
has
it
nothing to do.
seems.
No, it has nothing to do with my perception. There's a quote.
Well, you're
that
eager to accept that it was vengeance, which
It
means your
is.
perception's involved.
Yeah, partly. Then
you can't say it has nothing to do with it.
This particular part of it doesn't. Is that the quote is. The apology or the recompense must go as far as the offense went.
No.
And so, yes, I totally agree with this statement.
The contra quote I will submit in defense
let me
of that.
finish first.
Okay.
So the to me saying if something is done in public, meaning like the offense has been committed in public, then the unfortunate like needing to look at the truth and be eviscerated with the truth needs to be done in public.
Well, there's no theological certainty on this, but the argument would also be that Judgment Day is likely to be a public event. Potentially, I mean that's up to theological debate. But it's like, are you going to?
I'm not disagreeing
Will you
with
be
you, but
judged?
what do you?
Will you be judged one on one, or will the
that?
entirety of human existence be there when
What
you're judged? I
substantiates
don't.
that?
There nothing does. That's what I'm saying is.
Well, like I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just an
Theologically
interesting
speaking,
thought.
the concept of whether or not you will face judgment is that will that be a one-on-one or will that be in the presence of everyone who's ever lived? But it's not clear, so I don't know.
Sure, and I don't
But in either
disagree that
case,
vengeance
in neither
is
case,
God's.
just justice is served, whether it's in private or not.
Agreed.
So to me, that is ameliorating your own feeling, because the quote that I respond with as defense against that is, life is best when you accept the apology you never got.
Well, that's true.
So to say, because you shamed me publicly, you must now face recompense publicly. It's like, no, that's
No.
that then means your own peace depends on other people.
No,
and
no,
that
no,
means
no.
you are powerless.
That's not what I'm saying.
It is by default.
No. What I'm saying
You may not
is
have
if
meant
you're
it,
the
but
one,
it's part of it.
Okay, so the quote actually is about the person apologizing, not about the person receiving the apology. So let me state that first. If you are apologizing, you have to apologize as far as the offense went. That's something that you're owning on an ownership level based on an action you committed. I'm not suggesting I can't forgive somebody or make peace with somebody without any sort of response on their part. I've actually done it recently in the past, but
I don't know that I fully agree with this either.
It's like you walk away from a person going, no, I get to just cut ties with you and you aren't somebody I can trust ever again, kind of a thing. But I'm not holding a grudge. But that part I think
people can make recompense without even apologizing. In the eyes of God, that's the case. You don't have to apologize to me. You could still live the rest of your life in penitence, and I think that counts. Because again, it doesn't affect me.
Yes, I would agree.
If I can't move on without that, that's a reflection of me, not of them.
I would agree, but confession's important. Why is confession important?
Yes, and why is confession done between one? Okay, well, this is. You pulled the Protestant rug from under me because I was about to say, why is confession done between you and the priest? And I was like, oh, you don't mean it like that.
No, to one another. No, I'm saying.
I was like, that would be private. No, and yet you are still forgiven.
Well, agreed, but on a Catholic level. But it does say biblically that you are supposed to confess one to another, and even Catholics would agree with that. Whether or not you are also supposed to confess to the
idea is if you've gone to confession, you don't. I mean,
that doesn't absolve you of responsibility for ownership of wrongdoings with somebody. I don't think that's true. I think the priest would even, in fact, like if you say to the priest, hey, I'm here to confess I cheated on my wife, the first response more than likely of the priest would be, okay, well, you're going to have to tell her and go back and fix that.
I don't know enough to say definitively, but I'm saying...
Well, I mean...
The idea is, if you've gone to confession, then the argument is that the argument is not even that confession is what absolves you. The argument is that it's a sort of, by going to confession, you have already been absolved. It's
Agreed.
a bit of a...
Yeah, it's the willingness.
So the argument would be, the argument would be, well, whatever advice is given after that, you should take as spiritual training, I guess, or
sure.
or a practice that is meant to, well, yeah, sort of. It's like that's more guidance meant to put you back on the track, but it isn't what will save you. The forgiveness is already given.
Agreed, but in the same way...
So the idea that says, well, you must, if you go to confession, then you have to still confess to everybody else, is like, I don't know that's
not what I'm saying, but let me clarify, I suppose. Are you saying that you are never responsible to make amends, I suppose, for wrongdoings if it's with another person?
I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying...
In what case or capacity would it be?
Because the level to which something is affecting a large group of people, it's like that's something that's somewhat unknowable. Like if you say, yes, I stole from this person, so then yes, I would say you owe a debt to that person that needs to be repaid. But like that may have had an effect on multiple other people who you would never be able to know.
No, I'm not.
So it's not your job to hunt them all down and say, I must apologize to everyone. It's like if
Right.
you've done it between you and the one person who you can at least certain.
But you would have to go back and do that. Again.
Yes, but I don't think it needs. But again, this concept that it has to be as public as the thing was, it's like I don't.
No, this is what I mean by that.
That's too arbitrary to follow with any degree of certainty.
This is what I mean by that. It's as far as it depends on you, be at peace with everybody. This is what I mean, is that obviously you're not going to be able to say this is all the ripple effects of what this particular choice
Well, but
did.
You're opening that door, I guess.
Are you, though? Because what I'm saying is you have
say
to
it must
think
go as
about
far
it.
as the offense. It's like, well, how can
you
know how
who
far
is
the offense
apologizing,
went?
you go as far as you possibly can with the apology, is what I'm saying. You say to the person who, for instance, if I, am treating my wife disrespectfully, but that happens in front of my kids, I'm going to apologize to my wife, but then I'm also going to apologize to my kids and say, you know what, I shouldn't have done that in front of.
I'm not at all suggesting that this isn't wise behavior, but I'm not.
I don't think it's required, but I think if
Well,
we
you're
live our
talking
lives,
as if it might be.
no, okay, I'm not saying that it's required. I guess what I'm saying is
Good, certainly good counsel I can agree
Correct.
with, but I think you can also be saved if you live the rest of your life on an island and never apologize to anybody.
Agreed, but at the same time,
penitence is not between you and anyone else.
But do we want to live our lives in a way that says, how much do I not have to do in order to make it?
That's not, that's not what I'm suggesting, though. I'm saying penitence is not between people.
But I mean,
penitence
you are
is before God.
by default, you are asking the question, how much do I have to do?
Well, no, I never asked. I didn't ask any of this.
I didn't ask for this discussion.
I never once suggested that. I was simply countering your claim that, like, if you're going to apologize, you have to apologize to everybody that this affected. I'm like, well, you can't know that.
No, I'm not saying everybody.
So it's not reasonable
I guess
to
what
say
I'm
it.
saying is,
And I also think
would have been.
And again, you're also using this as a way of justifying your need for public shaming.
It's not even need for public shaming, and I grant it. I grant
You didn't deny that at first.
No, and I still don't
deny
it. What I'm saying is, because it's certainly a problem. Like, I'm not saying, hey, like, this is a part of me that I just go, yeah, it's fine, and I'm okay with it. It's a propensity of mine that says, I appreciate when truth has its day in a manner that says, this is a person that never wants to or intends to look at truth and now must. That, to me, is...
Did you finish
I do revel in that.
A Tale of Two Cities?
I don't recall that I did. I don't think I did.
Because it poses a alternative to your claims.
What alternative?
And if you don't know, I'm not going to be able to tell you because I won't rob that of you.
Well, okay. Then why are you bringing it up while we're talking about
because
it?
you mentioned that you had read it, but you didn't say whether or not you had finished it. So
No,
because the end of that, essentially, it is a character who is established throughout the show to be a bit of a bum, and who, at the very end, makes a sacrifice that saves the day, quote unquote, but is unknown by pretty much everyone except one other person.
Well, okay.
So the people who are helped by this person's sacrifice aren't aware of it.
That's not a problem to me.
Well, exactly, but that's where I would say that, this person's life ahead of this. The book isn't so moralizing as to say, therefore this man is atoned. It opens the question of saying, does this sacrifice, which was completely removed from the life of previous sort of bummishness, I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for.
Personality is bummish.
Like the life he lived previously, despite the fact that the sacrifice he makes now is totally unrelated, but it's like, does it still, despite being unrelated, absolve him of his previous wrongs? It doesn't answer that, but I think it does make a pretty compelling case that, yeah, it might.
Yeah, but that's still an action that it's being...
Yes, but it's not being done in the way you're saying it must be done in front of all the people who were previously affected. It's like, no, it was done essentially between him and
the Lord.
Effectively. I mean, again, it's not so moralizing as to do that, but that is essentially, it's like his final monologue is spoken basically to himself. And the argument then is his absolution complete, or is it only his own wishful, desire to escape or to make himself feel better?
My desire to see justice done, or even again as far as vengeance done in public, is not one of requirement as much as it is of desire, I suppose, or because
I can share that, but I don't know that
that's
I
all
would
I'm saying. I'm not
it's...
suggesting it's required. Because here's the thing: the reason I get so passionate about it is because it's so often not.
But see, this is where I think you have to. Yeah, but see, that's.
And it's true.
Greater justice can be done in the afterlife than I can do on Earth.
That's
the thing you do have to.
That
vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, is not
100%.
God's instruction to say, you withhold because it's my place. It's no, you couldn't do as good a job as I will.
Yeah, that's
so. There's a part of me that goes, if I want them to face the fullness of justice, then it is actually
better.
Greater justice will be done to them.
Yeah, agreed.
If I abstain.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I guess that's where I just go, as much as I'd like to see it, I'm not going to go around claiming that it's like, it isn't justice unless it's public.
No, and I'm not saying that either. I just think there are times, especially when... So, back to, I think, what rooted this original discussion was this idea
Klingons
of
and dwarves.
well, no,
who
the
knows,
idea that
man.
when you talked about like doing the dance and then pulling the rug out from somebody. I
wasn't
actually
talking about doing the dance. I was saying pull the rug and
right.
forget the
You're
dance.
saying always do that, and what I'm saying is there are times that I do want to do that, and to me, an example of that would be in saying you must, own the truth, and it must be, this kind of shock and awe vibe, but I don't. Most of the time, I wouldn't even say humility. I would say like benevolence and desire to err on the side of grace for people does win out in that I go, okay, I'm going to behind the scenes or in private with you communicate this, and we're going to be able to resolve this on a level that is amicable.
I think that's your agreeableness, because for me, I go, if you don't fix this yourself and it separates us, I will view that as no loss.
Sure.
Because you will have shown me that you will not side with truth, and I will. And if that is the metric by which that sifts us apart, then that is a metric I am willing to allow.
And I don't think that I won't get there eventually.
And some people might call that harsh, and I don't deny that it probably is. It's probably unpalatable.
It's a bit one-dimensional.
It might separate you from a lot of people, but I would go, okay, well, that's only a bad thing if that's not something you could cope with.
Sure.
Because if the only people in my life are those who made that choice, then that's probably still okay with me.
Agreed. But what I'm saying, I think, is because I would get there with someone, and in fact, I have with people.
Yes, but you're saying the most important relationships, yes. But for like acquaintances, I would say no, and that's just where I go. I don't need acquaintances if they're not going to be like that.
No, what do you mean? Like I would.
You're saying as a means of like participating in society, as it were, on a broader level. I'm not going to do that to everyone because you got to have. There's people who you just kind of have to live and let live.
True though. Like for instance, a great example would be my boss. He's not somebody I certainly would trust in a personal relationship. I have found him to be a liar in a couple areas, but I go, it's not something that I need to worry about.
This is not the vindictiveness of the idea that says I'm not always pursuing the Nathaniel approach of like I'm going to go to you with your sin and make you confess. I'm not suggesting that, but there is this element of if it comes to my doorstep, it will stop at my doorstep. That much I will say.
That I agree with you. Because
so if I notice that like, okay, yeah, you're dealing in ways I don't appreciate, I don't have to go to you and be like, in the name of justice, I demand resolution now, because that is a proactive step.
Sure.
I take the passive, immovable. Passive in the most extreme sense of, I certainly won't pursue this, but I will also not move. Which means if you bring it to me, it ends there.
Well, and that did happen.
That's where I would go.
There was a scenario in which that did happen where I was like, no.
And I'm saying I'm perfectly fine to be the glacier that just carves through the rock over centuries.
Sure.
That just goes, yeah, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to chase, but I also won't move. So your lies can exist elsewhere, and I won't hunt you down for them.
Right, correct.
But if they come to me, they will die there.
Correct. And I don't disagree with that. I think, for me, playing the diplomatic, depending on the context, again, seductive, diplomatic, benevolent vibe is not a game so much for the sake of posterity, maybe is a good word for it, as much as it is I suppose
posterity is like, that's to me like, why, what else is there but that?
Class.
which goes away.
Yeah, but
what's the point of this?
I appreciated when that was still a thing. Again, we talked about the idea that when
but see, that's a somewhat of a social anachronism because you are positing that had you lived under it, you would have been one of them, and it's like you probably, like the rest of the society, would have been under the boot heel. Because that's how it really was.
Agreed, but what I'm saying
everyone likes the aristocracy when you're in it.
Agreed. What I'm saying is, I think we've even
except me. That's where I go. I don't think I would even like the aristocracy if I was in it.
We've talked about this though, in that you've said, within the revolutions and things of that nature, one of the things that they did, I believe they threw the baby out with the bathwater. You've concurred in the past, at least, in that yes, it's good that we're all on equal playing field and people see each other as individuals and that kind of thing, but at the same time, the idea of propriety being lost is frustrating to me. Because it kind of smacks a bit of
this
like
is,
the
I think,
insincerity
this is
you were
overly
talking about
romanticized because the concept of aristocracy being proper is very much
that may be true.
Not the way
what
it
I'm
was.
saying is I'm getting at
That's
that.
an idealized notion of what aristocracy
but it's not
means.
about the game that I'm talking about. Propriety is why you would play that game.
No,
Yes.
power is why you would play that game, because the
It's not-
aristocracy,
everything doesn't come down to
the
power.
reason about not everything, the aristocracy kind of does.
No, I agree. But I'm not
Aristocracy
talking about the
is-
aristocracy.
Well, you just brought up the aristocracy.
No, what
so
I was saying was, again, in the past, propriety was based on, and class was based on, well, where were you sitting in the social structure, all this kind of stuff. Where all that was done away with, then there was this kind of brashness and like,
no,
we're
because
gonna
there was
just,
propriety in the Victorian era. I mean, I suppose the aristocracy was still around, so
Yeah,
skip forward. There was propriety in the 1920s, certainly more than we have today.
no.
Yes, there
I
are.
would say
By
that's-
far and away, 100 years ago, they were far more proper.
Sure,
you
but
might say
the
that
degradation began.
the degradation existed. Okay, look up Pope, whoever the Medici Pope was, because like it's your notion that the aristocracy was the guardians of propriety.
I'm not suggesting
is so not
I never
correct.
once asserted that.
You're
What I'm-
suggesting that the aristocracy, that the downfall and the impropriety began when the aristocracy fell.
No.
Well, that is what you just said. So
What
clarify what you said.
What I'm
then.
saying is to throw away the need for social courtesy and respect.
That isn't what
because
aristocracy
of-
was about.
No, I agree, but it did. There was a element of that.
Nor do I think it
expectation.
fell by the wayside either.
Oh, that's not
Because
I disagree
people
with that
treated
sentiment.
each other, the laymen treated each other better even 100 years ago than they do now. By
That
far.
well, again, that's certainly true, but that doesn't assert that before that there was a social obligation to say no, you have to abide by this particular set of standards, and if you treat people differently than that, you actually are the one that's the odd person out because you're actually being socially inappropriate. I appreciate being
socially
able to
inappropriate
say
is useless
being
as a term.
I disagree.
There
I
is
think that being
moral action and immoral action. There is no socially
I
unacceptable
disagree.
action. See, that's just where I
100%
go. This BS. The social game is nonsense.
It's not even.
Because if it's immoral, then it's immoral. If it's
Yeah.
just socially graceless but not immoral, I don't care.
That's fine. You can not care, but then that you're socially graceless.
And what?
Which is fine.
And of what moral weight is that?
If there doesn't have any moral weight, but not everything has to carry moral weight.
See, that's just where I go. I take the Klingon approach of yes, everything carries moral weight.
Okay.
Anything that doesn't can be dispensed with.
It can be dispensed with, but I think having an actual
Make the
Name
argument then. What's the
or-
use of it if it has no moral weight?
because of
The pleasure
courtesy.
of the moment?
No, because of courtesy.
Well, you
being
would
able
argue-
to
but
respect
see-
another individual and not do away with something simply because, again, pleasantries of like, hey, how's the weather and that kind of thing is not my favorite thing either. But it's nonetheless a useful thing within a societal culture because I'm talking to people like, you know, somebody checking out groceries at a grocery store.
Yeah, but see, if
or
somebody
whatever
at the
else.
grocery store started
It's like-
talking to me about like some like actual philosophical thing that's they're thinking on, I'd be like, I'm way more down to talk about this than the BS of
Sure.
of inanity.
But again, being somebody who socially is, again, brash or harsh and having
But see, you
people
don't have to
respond
see. This
to
is
you-
where I think
No,
you're
listen,
associating brashness and harshness with impropriety, and it's like
No, what I'm
there's
saying
you can
is,
be not socially graceful and not be brash or harsh.
what I'm saying is you stated that to state that somebody is socially graceless is a useless statement, and I'm saying
unless
if you are
unless
socially
their gracelessness stems from immoral action.
and what I'm saying is
if
even
it's
if
just
it
they're a
doesn't
little bit
stem from-
awkward, I go, I don't care.
even if it doesn't stem
it's
from
a little bit
immoral-
awkward to go up to someone and say, "Hey, let's discuss Kantian ethics."
but even if it doesn't
and I would
stem
much
from-
rather hang out with that person than with
Sure,
someone wanting to talk
but
about
even
the
if
weather.
it doesn't stem from immoral action, it is nonetheless true that if you do not
The only
act
argument
in
why it would be
accordance with
quote unquote
social-
bad is that it makes people uncomfortable. To which I say,
not just
screw people's
uncomfortable,
comfort.
because it's also, again, a matter of respect. The
No, it
way you
isn't.
deal with people, 100%.
Not inherently. You're attributing that if it isn't proper, it's disrespectful, and I don't.
No,
think
I'm not saying it has to be proper. What I'm saying is socially and
social
on a
graciousness is not respect based either.
On a sociological level, people get to tell you how you are going to be responded to in society.
No, they don't.
Yes, 100%.
Well, okay, they can try, and I can say I won't be accepting that
well,
response,
that's
and therefore,
true.
if that
And
separates
therefore
us, then that's fine.
Eliminates you from a lot of people, by and large.
And the people
most
I am left
society.
with will be the people I want.
That's fine, but what I'm saying is,
So what have I
to
lost?
me, the ability to actually function in a society at large.
So I've lost an
You've
ability
lost-
I don't want.
Sure.
So have I lost anything?
You haven't maybe lost anything on your own level, but I would say if it were me, I've lost something, because the idea of
But again, that's down
polis
to your own.
and
That's down to your own evaluation.
because sociologically,
Yes, you
do
just said it may not
interact-
matter to you, but it
interact
would
in a
matter to me.
vacuum. You don't interact in a vacuum.
It wouldn't be a vacuum, but the people I would be around are those who met the criteria I deem to be supreme.
And if no one did, then you are living in a vacuum.
Then I am in the presence of
A
God.
self-contained. But again, that's
There were hermits who lived in the presence of God, and they are saints now.
Sure.
So I go, okay.
Again, not everything to me is solely based on moral ethics.
Ethics, maybe not, but I think everything can be treated with moral weight. And the argument that
I don't think that's
not,
the only thing that's valuable. Let me say it that way.
posit an alternatively
I have,
valuable
and
thing
you
that
just
doesn't.
disagree with
Well,
me, which is
courtesy,
fine.
and that's okay. Well,
No,
but
it's
what's
not just courtesy.
based
It's
off of?
being able to actually socially interact with others on a level that says, I'm not going to be obtuse or boorish. I'm going
But
to be
see, you
somebody
keep
who's
redounding
interacting.
to
I'm not
unpleasant
redounding
adjectives
anything.
and saying,
No, I'm
if you
not.
don't adhere to these standards, this is
Because-
all you can be. And I think that
No,
that's not the
because
case.
I'm not saying that's all you can be. I'm saying other people will tell you that that's what you are. And that's...
Only
you
people
can
whose
be
opinion
okay.
I don't want.
That's fine. And you
Which,
can reject other
but then you're
people's
suggesting
opinion,
that those
that is-
people would be right.
No, what I'm suggesting...
Kind of are, because you're suggesting everyone would do that,
No,
therefore
what
you'd be
I'm
the odd man
suggesting
out.
is that that response you have to be okay with in that.
Oh yes,
If your choice is
you
to
get
be
to you
that-
can have whatever you're willing to own.
Exactly. So if you want to own that, that's fine. But that
then again,
may
I
be
say,
the
what have
way
I
that
lost?
Other people have responded to you, and that's fine.
But see, now you're putting stock in what other people think of you.
I think my name and my reputation has stock. I think that has value.
I think it has value insofar as society can be trusted. Because the perceptions of the average man, if they are wicked, I won't.
Yes, but
I
God
would
has called us nonetheless.
I would
to
rather
in the
be
world.
deemed a madman in a society full of the insane than be one of them. Because
Sure.
I go, you know what, if it is only me, I believe this to be the supreme good, and therefore if aligning with it ostracizes me from everyone.
Of course, again,
It's
if
the
it comes
cost.
down to something moral, then I would
But
say.
see, this is my point, is I'm saying it is
separating
coming from
myself-
something moral.
No, what I'm saying is separating myself.
You're saying not everything
on
is
a
moral.
moral level. Correct. That is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is separating myself on a moral level from society and saying
What
I'm not
do you
going
think
to
persists
redound
if
to
it isn't-
I'm not going to.
The reason I say everything
accept
that-
your rejection of what I'm saying simply because you're saying morally that something is incorrect. I don't have a problem separating myself from society at large when it's a moral standing. When it's something that's just simply my own perception, I go, I don't have a problem adhering to some sort of social expectation based on the ability for me to then earn a good name and interact.
A good name is only valuable
have-
in if the people who hold that, because a good name is not something you have. It
No,
is
it
something that
is.
dwells within other people. Because
But
it
it
dwells
can be
within their
something that
perception
you-
of you.
Yes,
It's not
and
something you
having,
yourself
and having
possess.
reputation, even within the.
I'm saying you
48 laws
cannot
of power,
possess. You can't possess
reputation
something
is
with.
important.
Have you read that yet?
Yes,
Where did you get it?
I'm saying.
Did you steal it from me?
No,
You've been sneaking in here.
no.
Well, then how did you read it?
I have been able to get things online. You can.
You've read the whole thing online then?
I have been working through it. I'm not done with it yet. But the bottom line is, it talks about reputation specifically being something that is.
it's-
You have to cultivate it.
But
Yes,
you cannot possess it because it is intrinsically
true.
in the eyes of others.
I agreed,
And
but that's why
therefore
it
the
has to
eyes
be
of others.
cultivated.
Yeah, but that's where I would say
You can't just.
it only has worth if the eyes of the people who hold it have worth.
And that.
To which
What
I say,
what I'm saying is,
a
to
corrupt-
truncate
I don't
your
want to
argument,
be-
no one has worth.
No,
Except for the
no,
people
no.
that earn your worth.
No, not my worth. The worth that I believe is external to me.
Yes, but what I'm saying is you get
Again,
to deem who that
now
is.
you're attempting to redound to morality, saying not everything redounds to morality. I'm saying
I'm
everything
not.
does redound to morality in one way or another.
I'm not redounding to morality at all. What I'm saying is you are putting yourself in a place of moral of
I'm perfectly willing to cut aside that which does not have moral significance, because what has moral significance is all that will last.
That's certainly true, and I won't disagree with you there. But to me, nonetheless,
Well, then what
I'm
else?
living
So
in a
what does the
society
reputation of people I don't care? The reputation held in the eyes of people who I don't believe have valid or valuable judgments. What use is that? Because their esteem of me matters only if I think they are capable of viewing the proper moral order.
I don't think that.
I don't want to be
I think-
respected amongst wicked people, because if they respect me, I'm probably wicked.
Correct, but I think to get back to the idea of diplomacy.
So your reputation means nothing unless the people amongst whom you hold that reputation are of moral standing.
That's where I disagree. I think
No,
that,
okay, you just agreed with the previous sentence, and all I did was restate it.
I don't know. No, I didn't. I agreed with the previous sentiment, but I didn't agree with the latter because it was slightly different. There's a sneak premise there.
I don't agree with that at all.
The sentiment
A
that
society that has no moral grasp on what I believe to be the moral issues, I don't want to be respected amongst them, because if I am, I probably think like them, and if they're not moral, I probably am not either. That is what I meant.
But by definition, that would have separated Jesus from all.
He was.
And yet he was still in the world.
And
And
killed
he
by
still
it.
yet, yes.
And by dying, saved it.
Agreed, but he still then had.
And also, it didn't separate him from
gathered
everyone.
around himself.
It separated him from the masses
No,
and those who believed.
Because even those that were in his inner circle, that he brought into his inner circle, were not those that 100% agreed with morally and adhered to morally.
Not adhered to, but agreed with. You can fail while aiming at the same moral standard. You don't have to hit it to be right, but you have to hold it.
All I'm saying is that what it does.
So it's not. I'm not saying that it can't be people who fail but still believe in the same moral standard. It's people who believe in a completely different moral standard.
I'm not suggesting that I want to have any sort of prowess or reputation with somebody who doesn't have any moral standard. What I'm saying
you have not said that.
I just did.
Well, okay, but now you don't get to act like that's what you've been saying this whole time.
I didn't say
You just said it just now.
contrary to that. What I'm
You
saying
have said,
is,
well, you said that I want my reputation, and all I'm saying is your reputation
do,
means
on a broad
nothing
level.
unless the people who hold that reputation of you.
and that I disagree with. I think that on a broad level.
No, because you can't say
can
that
have a
because
good
that's exact. You
reputation
can't
with people, multiple people,
only
even people you disagree with.
I'm not talking about disagree with. I'm saying the value of your reputation is entirely dependent on the people who hold that representation of you, their moral character, which means the reputation is meaningless in and of itself because the people.
No, because it earns you a voice.
Amongst what people?
People maybe who you don't respect at the time, but at least it earns you a voice to be able to speak to them and to interact with them.
But if
and
they are an immoral people,
ongoingly try to debate and
but an immoral
convince
people
them.
won't listen to you.
That's a very absolutist statement and position, certainly.
I don't know that I would call it absolutist, but the point is, what I am trying to say, and you have both agreed and not agreed, depending on how I've said it, which, in my mind, I've said the same thing multiple times. A reputation is not a vacuum. Again, you like the phrase you like to use. It's not something you can have in a vacuum. You can only have it when other people are viewing you.
Agreed.
Therefore, your reputation is not yours. It's actually in them.
Right.
Your reputation exists in the minds of the people who view you.
Correct.
If those people's evaluations are based off of immoral frameworks, then whatever reputation you hold with them is of no use because their esteem of you will be based off of their moral compass. And if their moral compass is askew, then, again, if you are respected amongst wicked people, you are being respected for being wicked because wicked people will respect wickedness.
No, I disagree that that's what they would respect you for. Being able
well, then
to
you're going to have to argue that.
So I'm about to. Being able to have a conversation, again, the value in having respect of those who may not have the same moral framework as you, is to say, if I've earned respect, in case in point, this would be a great example, is I had somebody who I worked with in one of my previous jobs who was a homosexual and knew where I stood on that on a moral issue. And because I was willing to have conversations with her in a very humble and open manner, in that I would communicate my idea of what truth was and saying, hey, this is what I believe is the absolute truth and here's why, and lay it out in that manner, because we had the ability to actually communicate on a respectful level where I was not, I was not characterizing who she was. I was not assuming any sort of part of her argument, nor was I saying, well, we can't interact at all because you're going straight to hell. Is it true that she is going straight to hell? Probably. But the point is, in that interaction, what I did was I earned the ability to communicate with her, and in fact, started to be able to communicate these truths and sway her in a position of saying, hey, maybe I need to communicate, or I need to consider these things in my life. That is the value of it. It earns you leveraging power.
You snuck a little bit of your own premise in there by suggesting that, like, oh, I was respectful and we had this, and that was where, you've said that multiple times, this notion that, my dispensing with trivial social stuff inevitably translates to disrespect. And I feel like you've conflated that a lot.
Maybe that's not fair.
Again,
all I'm saying is your perception, other people's perception of you, will change the way they interact with you. Maybe let's.
Well, that is, but again, I take the Stoic principle, which is I have no sway over that.
Sure, but
so
you can
what
change the way that you're interacting with somebody in order to position yourself to better have a voice. That's certainly true as well.